Good evening, my name is Paul, and the claim that I'll be responding to is the capital punishment has a positive effect in the United States. Some background really quick is capital punishment is also known as the death penalty, is the legal process in which an individual is put to death for their crime by the state. Currently there are 32 states that allow the death penalty. The advocates' secondary claims were 1, capital punishment is used as a deterrent to prevent harsh crimes. 2, capital punishment positively affects the general public. 3, capital punishment allows the prison system to be more effective. And these are my responses to those claims. In response to the first claim, capital punishment and deterrence have no correlation. The advocate states that people fear committing crimes because they fear the consequences. However, in April 2012, the National Research Council concluded that studies claiming that the death penalty affects murder rates were fundamentally flawed because they did not consider the effects of non-capital punishment and used incomplete or implausible models. According to Amnesty International, a survey of criminologists revealed that over 88% believed the death penalty was not a deterrent to murder. The threat of execution at some future date is unlikely to enter the minds of those acting under the influence of drugs and or alcohol, and those who are in the grip of fear or rage, those who are panicking while committing another crime, or those who suffer from mental illness or mental retardation do not fully understand the gravity of their crime. The advocate also claims that more executions do prevent murder. According to the Death Penalty Information Center, the murder rate in non-death penalty states has remained consistently lower than the rate in states with the death penalty. So yes, over the years, the murder rate is decreasing, but it is also decreasing in states that do not enforce the death penalty. So it doesn't show that the death penalty deters criminal activity. In response to the second claim, the general public would be better off without the capital punishment system, and the states would save billions in taxpayer money. The advocate claims that capital punishment costs less taxpayers' money compared to prisoners with life sentences over a long period of time. But according to the Death Penalty Information Center in 2011, a study conducted by Judge Arthur Alarcon and Professor Paula Mitchell, they did a study to examine California's history with the capital punishment system. They found that California taxpayers pay $4 billion more than states who do not have life without parole as the most severe punishment. These costs include pretrial and trial costs, appeal costs, and state and federal appeals, far greater than the cost of incarceration alone. They calculated that if all death row inmates had their sentences changed to life without parole, it would result in savings up to $170 million per year and $5 billion over the next 20 years. In response to the advocate's last claim, capital punishment and the effectiveness of the prison system are not correlated. The advocate claims that the death penalty protects prison guards through strict monitoring, but according to Calvin Lightfoot, a former corrections officer, warden, and secretary of public safety of the state of Maryland, states that safety inside prisons depends on proper staffing, programming, and effective reintegration of inmates back into society. The death penalty does not safeguard anybody. And according to Equal Justice USA, they interviewed former correctional officers and wardens and found that people serving life sentences have to make prison their homes forever. So preserving even tiny privileges makes a big difference to their quality of life. Those serving life sentences are least likely to commit murder in prison. So the advocate's supporting claims to the statement that capital punishment has a positive effect in the United States do not really support that claim, and other evidence can be found against it. Thank you.
All right, Paul, organizationally everything is good. You kind of do a summary that I don't think is necessary, defining what capital punishment is and kind of talking about the number of states that use it. That's probably not essential to the arguments that you're presenting here, so you can cut that back. On the deterrence issue, you basically have a general counterclaim on the studies that suggests that there's some problem with them. I don't know if any of those studies were cited by the advocate. The generic criticism is okay at this point since we don't have particular studies that we're dealing with. I guess that's okay. And then the argument that says the vast majority of researchers believe that it is not a deterrent, that's pretty reasonable also. So those two arguments seem to be applicable to the point that's being presented. I didn't really hear much of an explanation of what the advocate's evidence on this particular point was. You do have a kind of a reasoning challenge that just says, look, people who commit these crimes do them without considering the consequences, and I understand that's a good reasoning challenge, although again, I don't know that it applies to the argument that the advocate presented on this particular point. On the second point, on the cost issue, most of this focuses on data from California, and I think there are probably, there's not much dispute that it's more expensive in California to do these kinds of things. The real question then becomes, this is really one of those places where a value issue comes into play. How do people feel? Are they willing to pay for it? Is that important? Is there a negative consequence to that particular money being spent this particular way? That I think would require a further debate on both sides. So it's not unique to your position that you're taking. I think that you found the right arguments to make on this point. Although again, there's not really you've got your information, but it's not being contrasted to the evidence that the advocate presented on that point. So I thought that was a little bit problematic. And then on the last argument, there's some kind of generic information about the security in prisons. It sounds pretty good what you've got. You've got a couple of quotes here that I think are probably applicable. And once again, I don't know what the the advocate said on those particular points, and so the contrast is a little bit hard to take out. I'm inclined to believe the information that you're presenting here because it seems like it's reasonable. But like I said, if we were hearing these arguments back to back, the comparison would be a little bit more stark, and I think you'd have to be a little bit more forceful in showing us why your information is better or more believable. All right. Thank you.